Namastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may God protect us. May God nourish us. May we work together with energy and vigor. May our study be enlightening and not give rise to misunderstandings. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatguru. I salute Krishna, the Guru of the universe, God, the son of Vasudeva, the destroyer of Kamsa and Chanura, the supreme bliss of Devaki. We are still working on chapter number 2, the Yoga of Knowledge. And last class, we continue working on the summary of these so far 54 verses of chapter number 2, again, the Yoga of Knowledge. And I'd like to focus today on what we call the Stita Prajna, the man of steady wisdom. He is our standard. He is a liberated soul, so we should know how he behaves, how he talks. And then I will again come back to the means to get there, which is where we left off last class. I was about to start talking about again the yoga of karma, or karma yoga, which is, according to the Gita and our scriptures, is the means to purify our mind so that we can achieve and live like a liberated soul God desires. When a man completely casts away, O Arjuna, all cravings that torment the heart, he renounces all desires that have entered his mind and remains satisfied in the self alone, by the self. Then he is said to be a man of a steady wisdom. Now, if you analyze the words here, when he completely casts away all the cravings that torment his heart. Now, let's try to analyze this from our daily life. Is it this possible? Sounds like a big goal. Fire is hot. It need not go anywhere in search of warmth, in search of heat. It is hot. So Atman, who we are, is bliss. Now this is very important because this was told to Arjuna. Shri Krishna told Arjuna that in reality he is the self, the capital self, and the nature of the self is bliss. So the man of steady wisdom knows this. Not just knows, he lives in this bliss. Now what happens? Atman imposes the bliss within on objects outside and goes in search of those objects, believing that with their acquisition, happiness can be gained. Again, Atman imposes the bliss within on objects outside and goes in search of those objects, believing that with their acquisition, happiness will be gained or achieved. This search outside for happiness is called craving, desire, kama, or wants. This attracting modification of the mind, encouraging us to go outside, is called kama. You might have heard this word, it's very famous, but in this particular case, is this modification of the mind, this craving from within us in search for this happiness. Now, these waves and ripples of the mind obstruct the vision of the Atman, the vision of the self, the capital self, and does not allow us to make contact with that bliss. The changeless bliss within reveals itself as the happiness coming from the sense objects outside, which has happened to need the right contact based on our hankering or wants, and that a spark of bliss will come from within us. But it will never last long. Any type of bliss we get from the external world is a borrowed happiness. Remember the borrowed happiness? The dependent happiness? And what we want is independent happiness, independent bliss. You will be okay as long as the condition lasts. Whereas in a situation where you simply find yourself content with yourself, regardless the conditions or external circumstances, then our inner state will remain independent. He who realizes this intuits that the happiness he sought for in the world outside is in its entirety in himself. He remains self-satisfied. He remains capital self-satisfied. Our scriptures say that that source of bliss we look for in the outside world is sitting within us. It is God sitting in our own hearts. The goal of human birth is to find that freedom from external dependencies. Now, freedom in Sanskrit is called moksha. And moksha is complete satisfaction with myself. I don't need anything. I shouldn't depend on anything. And with this, I'm trying to explain why this man of steady wisdom is just simply happy with himself. He remains satisfied in the self alone, the capital self. Total satisfaction with myself as I am, with capital I am. As I am, as Atman, as well as I am, with the facts of nature. Now we all are spiritual beings leading a human life, experiencing a human life, a worldly life. We are in this world, in these human bodies. And we all have a life, we all have our duties, and our goal is to spiritualize everything, to integrate everything. How do we do that? Total acceptance. Total acceptance. I really need to accept the fact that I am Atman, I am the self, I am already independent. Everything I want is coming from within me. He is a Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul who can live in this world without being attached. He is like the lotus leaves in water, which are never wetted by the water. He is the highest of human beings, nay, the highest of all beings, for he has realized his identity with the Absolute. He has realized that he is one with God. So long as you think you have the least difference from God, fear will seize you. But when you have known that you are He, that there is no difference, entirely no difference, that you are He, all of Him, and that the whole of Him, then all fear ceases. Why? What is the source of fear?
Otherness.
Fear is born?
Not knowing.
Not knowing. Yes, of course. Yeah.
The sense of separation.
The sense of separation. Yes.
Otherness is what he said. Did you hear it?
Otherness.
Duality.
Duality. Duality is the father and mother of fear. So when we find ourselves experiencing that, we have to assert ourselves and assert the truth. Remember the truth. We need to transform this knowledge of the self. We need to be able to use this knowledge of the self and transform our lives, transform our characters, transform our personality. We need,
use that to create a miracle.
in a way, yes. But we should be wise and use that wisdom, because that's the message coming from the seers. And if we don't do that, then we shouldn't complain. The man of a steady wisdom, a liberated soul, is he who has mastered his emotions, he who is not attached. Therefore, we should use this knowledge to be able to master our emotions. The Jivan Mukta, the living free, or the one who knows, is no personality. He embodies the principles. He alone is able to give real love, real charity, real truth. Because he knows, he is free from attachment, he is free from fear, he is free from anger, free from intolerance, free from anxiety. He is free from emotional disruptions. He is free from emotional reactions. Because he knows, he remains calm. And calmness in our life is essential. This is the message of Sri Krishna, especially in the verses we are going to summarize again today. Karma Yoga. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because we should know the standard. There is a famous saying that goes, fake it and make it. I don't know if you really have to fake this, but if you know, then you are reminded, and you should try your best in order to apply this in your life. When you're about to react, just remember calmness. You see?
It's actually fake it till you make it.
Oh, what? Fake it and make it? No?
Fake it until you make it.
Well, then there is a process. A long process. And if we analyze this also, not just in our life, but also if we take this to the context of the chapter number 2 and where Arjuna was not a man of steady wisdom. He was overpowered by his emotions. He was in trouble. He needed to pursue or do his duty, and he couldn't. Therefore, the Lord discloses the knowledge of Brahman to him. And the means is called Brahma Vidya and Yoga Vidya. Brahma Vidya is the knowledge of the self, the message of the Upanishads, and Yoga Vidya are the means. How do you transform your personality? All this is found here in the Bhagavad Gita. Self-mastery, inner strength, inner maturity, inner mastery is called moksha or liberation. Self-mastery, inner strength, inner maturity. Every human being seeks to lead a happy life. We all do. Physical happiness, emotional happiness, and at a different level, intellectual comfort. Unfortunately, the majority of people are lost in the pursuit of these in the outside without realizing that the only source of security and happiness is within themselves, within ourselves. According to Vedanta, every human being, except those liberated souls, are naturally selfish. Is that true? Are we selfish? There are different aspects of this selfishness. It will become more clear when we hear this.
Swami, is that our default selfish?
A default?
That's where we default to.
Our normal. Where we start.
It's a normal thing in nature. In nature, it's normal. So we shouldn't react. We should not be afraid of this. It's natural. The only thing is we need to understand this and how it is affecting us. Because in reality, a spiritual life can be summarized in one single word. And those who've been here for a while, they should know. What is that word? Unmarveled. That's great.
Well, there's so many words you can use.
That's great. Unselfishness. Yes. That's our goal. So, but unfortunately, naturally we are selfish, and this can be expressed in three ways. The first expression of selfishness is ahamkara. My ego. Ahamkara. Ahamkara is a notion or idea that I am an individual. Do you still believe that you're an individual? Then there is ahamkara, but there is nothing wrong. It's okay. I am an individual. I am a human being with a body and mind. The second expression of this selfishness, which is a consequence of the first, the ego, is mamakara. Mama, mine, my house, my dog, my this, my that, my property, my land. And the third expression of this selfishness is called raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes. Because I am an individual and I want things for me, there are things that I like and there are things that I dislike. And I take that in my life, and I express that in my life, in my relationships, in my goals. And guess what happens when you just run into someone that you don't click with very well, or your desires or goals are not fulfilled. What happens?
Oh, you get mad.
You get mad. Why? What is the source?
What is it? The third one? What is it called?
Raga and Dvesha, likes and dislikes. Because we attach ourselves to this, our idea of being an individual. We talked about this last week, or our last class. But this is very important to remember because the topic, the subject demands this to be clear with us, because we need to understand where we are standing. So, dvesha means hate or aversion to the things or people that make me unhappy. And the opposite, raga, is that which pleases ahamkara, which pleases my ego. Now, this is very common. I mean, it's so natural in us. These two, attachment and aversion, are twin brothers and big friends of our ego, our ahamkara and mamakara, my and mine. Now, how do we deal with these things? And by now we should understand what do we mean when we say we all want liberation. We all want freedom. Freedom from what? From this bondage. There are two verses I'd like to quote from chapter number 12. Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitrah karuna evacha nirmamo nirahamkaraha samadukha sukhakshami santushtas sadatan yogi yadatma dhrudanishtayaha mayarpitamano buddhihi yo bhakta same priyaha. He who hates no creature and is friendly and compassionate towards all, who is free from the feelings of I and mine, even-minded in pain and pleasure, forbearing, ever content, steady in meditation, self-controlled, and possessed of firm conviction, with mind and intellect fixed on me, says Krishna. He who is thus devoted to me is dear to me. He who hates no creature and is friendly and compassionate towards all, who is free from the feeling of I and mine, even-minded in pain and pleasure, forbearing, ever content, steady in meditation, self-controlled, and possessed of firm conviction, with mind and intellect fixed on me. He is thus devoted to me, and he is dear to me. How do I know if I have attained such a state or not? I guess it's no-brainer. But again, I have to ask this question. How do I know if I have attained such a state or not? Because some people sometimes, we all sometimes feel, oh, well, I have achieved something, I feel, that I'm a little less selfish, or, Well, attainment of this state is indicated by the transformation of our character, the transformation of our personality. We have to show it. can't hide this. It has to be transparent. That's the beauty of it.
If you feel that at one point or another, is it permanent?
Can I just put the question to you? we need,
Permanent.
he corrected me. Fake it until
You make it.
you make it. Until. Maybe you fake it and make it, like the way I put it before. Right?
Is your little self your personality, or is that like just your like mind and stuff? That's your personality.
Depending on what do you understand by self. The little self is your personality, indeed. The capital self is who you are in reality, without or deprived of any identification. Is the witness.
Do you exit this body with your little self?
Yeah. As long as you are identified, as long as that capital self, that who you are, is identified with this, your individuality, then it becomes a little self. It turns into a little self.
Well, how do you just change your personality?
That's why we are doing this. Number one, you have to remove your ignorance. You have to know. You have to listen. Shravana. Listen. So attainment of this state is indicated by the transformation of our personality. No escape. Swami Dhyanayogananda says spiritual life is character, building up your character. It's a new character, a spiritual character. We have to make use of this knowledge, of the knowledge of the wise man, the knowledge of the scriptures, and turn that intellectual knowledge into emotional strength. We need to apply this in our life. I gave a talk some time ago on Master Your Emotions. And I kind of thought about the title, because if you master your emotions, let me tell you, you master yourself. Throughout the life, it is our emotional personality that is interacting. It's the culprit. Our life, if we analyze our interaction with others throughout the day, our emotional personality is creating chaos. For good or for bad. All the time. You see, we look at each other and we know exactly what we're talking about. Talking to our brahmachari. Let's see. Our attraction and rejection, raga and dvesha, our likes and dislikes, makes us react all the time. Makes us react. Why? Because raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes, is friends of my individuality. I am. It's me. See how subtle things are. But we need to understand this. Otherwise, and again, this is natural, so we can't really be so hard on ourselves, you see. Oh, I'm such a bad person, I will never be able to do this. Or, no, there is nothing like that. This is natural. It's available to everyone. We need to make use of this knowledge, the knowledge of the self, so that we can be emotionally strong. Otherwise, our life will not show coherence. Will not be coherent. Knowledge will be there at one level, of course. There is no doubt about that. But in my day-to-day life will not show the transformation in my character. Spiritual life is exposed all the time in our character, in our personality. So we want to become aware of it. It's not just sitting in meditation and so I've done my job today and let's go out and start throwing stones. See?
Skipping stones. Enjoying.
Yes. There should be no disconnection between the knowledge of the self and my personality. We should be able to apply this. We should be able to be responsible. The moment we hear about this, we need to practice manana. Constant discrimination, constant thinking about reasoning about this. And how can I transform and apply this in my life? If I don't change my personality, then what's the point? Very nice word, Swami. Yes, the self is great. But then, go back home and I forget everything. Do you remember last class, when we talked last class? A little bit there, maybe. I will come back to that. So basically when we say we want moksha, we want freedom from that individuality. We want freedom. We need a break from our individuality. We need to be emotionally independent. Now, the physical dependence, we all have physical dependence. We depend on food, clothing, shelter. But I'm not talking about that needed kind of dependence that we need. I'm talking about that emotional dependence. And the knowledge of the self, the jnani, the jivan mukta, the man of steady wisdom is absolutely independent, does not depend on anything emotionally. This will become clearer now. He is content in his own self. He is beyond ego. He is beyond ahamkara, mamakara. He is beyond raga and dvesha. My likes and dislikes. He has mastered himself. Now that's our goal. We want that sense of freedom. Now, to put all this in the context of a spiritual seeker, a person who is interested in leading a life based on values, he needs to embrace some kind of practice where the center is not his limited ego, but a principle. Does that make sense? By doing this, he forgets himself, his identification, and opens up to the real identity. The one without a second, where there is nothing but fulfillment. Fullness of what we are, existence absolute, knowledge, consciousness, awareness absolute, and the best one, bliss absolute. Fullness there, in there. There is no place for anything else, no place for desire. We are completely satisfied. Now I said desire. I know, I'm going to talk about this. Today I decided to talk about desire. Finally. I have noticed that whenever I talk, usually, to you guys, or particularly when I try to convey to youngsters or Anshu or other friends that come here, how beneficial it is to lead a spiritual life, and how important it is, and how beautiful it is. In fact, that's the only way we can live. Live in a spiritual life. There is no other way if we want to enjoy our life. And I find that when no, we explained everything, but when it comes to that word, you have to renounce your desires. It's all over. Because I mean, we are like, Swami, stop. It was beautiful, but I am full of desires. I can't stop my desires. In fact, and I say, because desire is life. That's keeping you alive, in a way. So, does it mean that spiritual life is not for you? No. Spiritual life is for you, because spiritual life is your birthright. It's your right. Our desires should be directed. That's what happens. Should be directed towards a higher goal. That's all. The ultimate goal. Everything, our whole entire life, should be directed towards that goal. Then everything is okay then. Desires are allowed. Only if you have that goal, ultimate desire, which is to be free. Now, if you want to be free, you have to apply this in your life. But desires are allowed. What kind of desires do we have? As a mother, you desire. As a father, you desire that your kids are good, are raised well, that they grow up and they go to the university, and you work hard for that. And is that allowed? Why?
It's Dharma.
Because it's Dharma. Excellent. Because it's Dharma. You nailed it.
Not one.
It is Dharma, it is duty. We should all understand our responsibilities in life. Remember, we all have a role. We are all actors, and we all have roles in our life. If we are alone, we have our responsibilities. If we have a family, we have our responsibilities. Therefore, desires are naturally natural. So you desire things based on Dharma. Legitimate desires. These are legitimate desires. Dharmic desires. And I should be able to do my duty towards my children in this case, and I want to fulfill my duties, which is a very, very legitimate desire. It is okay. Similarly, if you want to buy a new house, and you like that, I don't know, the one with the swimming pool is absolutely valid, it is legitimate, there is no conflict there. The other day, I remember once I was in a Q&A, and after the Q&A, one of our devotees or friends who happened to be here, she goes, Swami, that's fantastic, I like it so much, but I just want to succeed in my life. I just want to do this, I want to do that. And I was, what's the problem? Go for it. But this is important. Your primordial, your ultimate desire should be freedom. Now, if you have that freedom, clearly tells you that you have to be unselfish and lead a life based on spiritual values. So everything, goes together. You can't escape. But it's okay to have these desires based on Dharma, based on your life, your role in life. So, but that's not all. There is something else that we need to be aware of, and we call it moderation. Because naturally, if you're yes, I'll go for it, I will just work 24/7, but what happens? If you do not pay attention to your inner life, if you do not give enough time to love yourself, to bathe within yourself by the practice of the repetition of the name of God, meditation, prayer, then what's going to happen? you will lose balance. You will go towards the other side. And life is not like that. The spiritual life is balance. So you can't allow yourself to get so busy that you can't tell me, okay, Swami, but I can't see it, I can't meditate, I can't think of God, I can't assert myself, I'm so busy. Well, there are no excuses. If we really love this, if we really want to lead a good life and enjoy our life, we have to give time to our spiritual life, our inner contact. We have to contact ourselves every day, just like we take a shower every day. We should give time for this inner path. And another thing that is important is that these desires, these legitimate desires, in moderation, should not bind you. Should not bind you. And what I mean by this is we need to convert our desires into preferences. I prefer this, but if that doesn't happen, then I'll be okay. I will try my best to fulfill my legitimate desires in moderation, but then if you try your best, and I'm talking about karma yoga now, and if that doesn't happen, then you should be fine with it and move forward. It should not bind you. What happens is we get so attached. I want. Stuff. Then we are unable to practice spirituality because of this. Because our likes and dislikes, our preferences. So, when a desire is a binding desire, it has the potentiality to upset us, to afflict us. Because when I have a binding desire, naturally I try to fulfill that. But whether the desire will be fulfilled or not is not totally in my control or under my control. Sometimes it is, sometimes not. Do you agree? Does it make sense? Then how do you deal with this not being able to control everything? Because you can't be, manager, you want to control everything. You can't. You just can't. And this is where the teaching of Sri Krishna comes. We need to be able to accept, to practice acceptance.
I was going to say, you can't control what happens, but you can control how you react.
Yes, beautiful. Exactly. So, imagine the case of a parent who wants, his son to be a doctor and ends up being a monk.
Who is this?
Ends up being a monk. What are you going to do? This is life. So, I'm just showing you how legitimate your desire is to be a good parent, to guide your son or your daughter. And again, you see.
Practice acceptance by thinking that he's a doctor of the spirit instead of the body.
There you go.
A lot worse.
So this mental readiness is required. This mental preparation born out of wisdom. And to convert my desires or non-binding or binding desires into non-binding desires, or preferences. I should be able to be ready for anything, whether good or bad. So is it clear now when we talk about desires, when we talk about these cravings from the heart, what does it mean? That although a legitimate desire, I may not be practicing moderation in my life. Or what's even worse, I'm completely attached to it. So, to be honest with ourselves and sincere, in our spiritual life, it is essential. We should give time to our spiritual practices and be reminded of all this. Without it, it's hard. It's harder. Well, with this, I'd like to link this with the next verses, verse number 38, where Shri Krishna starts conveying Arjuna the means, how to transform your life. And he explains to Arjuna that the way is being unselfish. The only way is to work unselfishly. We call it karma yoga. Should we stop here? Do you have questions or comments? Otherwise, I can quote the verse and continue for another 5 minutes.
Yes.
Should I? Very good. Sukha dukkhe same krutva labha labhau jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naiva papamavapsyasi. Realize that pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat are all one and the same. Then go into battle. Realize that pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat are all one and the same. Then go into battle. Do this, and you cannot commit any sin. Shri Krishna was trying to convey Arjuna the knowledge of the self, was trying to change Arjuna's mind because he needed to fight, he needed to pursue his duty. We talked about it last class. We talked about duty, dharma. We talked about omission and commission, sins. In his particular case, he was omitting basically his duty. His duty because he is a warrior and he was in a situation where he needed to fight. So Shri Krishna tried to convey, to encourage Arjuna philosophically by conveying to him the knowledge of the self, which is the message of the Upanishads. And then ethically, he also tried to explain why he needed to fight, and from the worldly angle, also trying to tell him, if you don't do this, what will people think about you? Your family, your name, all your fame will be trashed. And so Shri Krishna, with this verse that I just quoted, concludes these three approaches. And here he's talking about the attitude, how you should work. Accepting the fact of this pair of opposites in our life. If a person has efficiently has to efficiently act in this world. The most important characteristic is learning to be balanced in mind. Realize that pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat are one and the same. Equanimity. And for that, if we understand that, then we will remain calm. Calmness of mind. Questions?
I lost track. I don't know what chapter we're in.
Chapter 2, verse 39, 38, 39.
What chapter are we in?
We are summarizing chapter 2 from verse number 1, of course, to verse number 54. And so far, with the summary, I just finished with verse number 38.
So attitude is in 38.
Attitude is in 38.
Okay, thank you.
But attitude is throughout the entire Gita. I mean, attitude it is essential. When you know you have to do the spiritual life, you have to have the right attitude towards God and towards nature. The right attitude towards your fellow being right next to you. Knowing who he is, proper respect, love, consideration. Questions?
Are there any value to ego?
Is there any value to ego? Yeah, ego makes you free. Ego will make you free. When you get tired of your ego, you are done with it. That's the game. When you get tired of yourself as ego, when you get tired of these blows of life, then you will try to deal with it. So there is value, actually. Life without a struggle is no life.
So does the liberated man still have an ego?
Is
Does the liberated
yes and
man
no. What
still
do you
have
think he's
ego?
identified with?
Yeah, he's unidentified.
Now, from your
What did he say? What did he say?
He said, "May I share?" He said, "Yeah, I'll show it to you."
the liberated soul, you cannot. You know, the ways of a liberated soul remain unknown. He can behave like a madman, like a kid.
There's no rules for him.
He may not talk to you. So you may think, see, that's the ego. So, but, yeah.
Is there a Sanskrit word for the word ego?
Ahamkara.
Oh, so Freud stole it from the Gita.
Freud.
Freudian psychology.
Uh-huh.
And he tried to take credit that he invented the ego. I think I'm not sure though. I don't know.
Well, many people, I mean,
Did he steal from the Gita, or?
I don't know. He talks about personality and, ego, but the sense of I. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if Freud was inspired in the Gita.
Freud's big contribution was the discovery of the unconscious.
The unconscious, I was thinking about that.
As far as personality is concerned. And then he did the ego, the
Super ego, that's right.
those three things, and he divided the things up. But I think that the ego, developmentally, just from a psychological point of view, is that when we're born as babies, we have to differentiate.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that we differentiate, and then we start identifying with the limited beliefs
It is natural.
Yeah.
There
it's
is
very natural
nothing.
thing, and it's also natural for it to drop. That we keep holding on to it because it's unconscious.
The problem is, when the child is not really identified with his ego. In the beginning, it is said that the very first 5 years, we just, if you really want to see how a holy man behaves, also you can see a child. In this moment, he seems to be attached, but next moment he just drops, his toys, and it's unpredictable. But again, he seems to be free of what we know now of as our identity. It is very subtle, and I think that the message here is to understand how we are affected by it, and that there is nothing wrong with our ego. It's just that we need to give it a higher direction, because we should regain our real individuality as the self, where we are all one in there. That's our real individuality.
That was profound. An individuality of the self. That was
There is only one without a second. So when you merge there, it's
She said that was
so
profound. What did he say?
Is pride like a positive motivational factor? Because it motivates us to keep our grass green, or paint the house, or shine up the car with wax and then put gloss on the tires. Because if we didn't have pride, we probably wouldn't do all that stuff, maybe, right? I don't know.
What do you think? Pride. If we just talked about, being aware of our identity and how pride, I don't think it's helpful, but it will help you too much. However, we should not deny the fact of dignity in our life.
Self-respect, you're saying? Or?
What's the point of trying to be proud of something? Just be content with yourself that you have done something good. But the moment you start showing it off, you get trapped.
Swami, wouldn't that be part of the swinging on the duality thing of
Yeah,
pride
of course.
and shame?
Yeah, pride and shame.
And then
One day you can be proud, and then next day, things don't turn out the way you wanted or expected.
But Vivekananda said it's about, equanimity and going to the one and developing character. And
Yes.
would be
Yeah.
character. And
So-
the sense of the dignity in how you live your life and how you care for things. Like Mother even talked about, don't throw the broom outside. The broom, it helps you sweep the floor. Regard it as
Yeah, everything is meaningful. Everything carries its own dharma. The broom itself has got its own dharma. If you break it, the dharma is gone. So how are you gonna sweep the floor? If that's not around. So you shouldn't fall into the traps or snares of these ego side kind of feelings, like being proud or etc. etc.
I was just telling Alex today, because we were talking before, just a little while ago, and I was saying, I just didn't have the meditation that I wanted this morning. Like it depressed me. Talk about pride.
Well, you see, sometimes, even with our spiritual practices, sometimes, no matter how much we try, we take a shower every morning, we go to the shrine, it's like, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to think of God. And then, I don't know, you think, oh my God, why is here so much? And then, things come to your mind, and your mind is restless. Equanimity.
Exactly.
You should be,
Alex reminded me.
never mind, just
That's a holy company.
come back to your being, come back to yourself. Know that everything is okay.
Oh.
So expectation, whenever we have expectation, just watch out. it will take you out of your balance. Yes.
So am I correct in interpreting, it seems like the core message here is to find balance?
Yeah, absolutely.
It seems like the
Understanding
core
the difference
message is to
between
find balance.
whether you're bound or whether you're free. So like with Dharma, let's say you take on a responsibility in your life,
Mm-hmm.
then you treat it with dignity,
Mm-hmm.
you take care of it, and because you want to, because it deserves it,
Absolutely.
because you chose it and you're fulfilling your responsibility. But as soon as, I guess, you get too attached and overdo it or try to control what you can't control, or you desire what's more than what you really need to desire, then you're bound. Then when you're not free anymore, you're bound.
Yes.
You've taken it too far.
Yeah.
So it's like
You lost balance.
understanding where you are in that.
You lost balance because all you can do is just do your best, give your best. That's it.
And leave the rest.
And accept and leave the rest. And accept the consequences. I mean, sometimes you can have control over your son, you know, until he reaches a certain age, and then he's on his own. I mean, you have tried everything. You've tried your best, and you know, so you can accompany him, you know, in his decisions and everything, but you try your best. And sometimes we try our best. When I say that is with our limitations. We need to accept our limitations. You can't change the past. You just need to accept it. So there is no point in blaming yourself. When I say you try your best, is, you know, according to your life experience, till you become aware of this, and you can change your present, because your present is going to be your future. But it's wisdom. Now we need to apply it. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you.